Hello everyone, my name is Bernard Muhia. Welcome to the Zingi Environmental Series. Egypt is hosting the United Nations 27th Conference of Parties on Climate Change, that is COP27. Now the one thing that connects Kenya to Egypt is the River Nile. In today's video, we are going to take the road to COP27 through the Nile River.
Water is a precious natural resource, and with climate change, it's becoming a scarce resource. Due to changes in weather patterns, the droughts are lasting longer and the floods becoming more severe.
The Nile River, at 7,000 kilometers, is Africa's longest river, and it flows through 11 countries, serving 280 million people. The Blue Nile, which originates from Lake Tana in Ethiopia, contributes 80% to Nile, while the White Nile, which originates from Lake Victoria in East Africa, contributes 20%.
A growing population means increased need for electricity for domestic and industrial use. This is what Ethiopia had in mind when they conceptualized the $5 billion Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile River.
The dam is the largest in Africa. However, Egypt immediately became nervous. Egypt relies on the Nile River to provide for 90% of its water needs. It is then understandable that any plans to restrict the flow of the Nile would be met with resistance from Egypt.
Ethiopia says the JAD will bring cheap power and boost its current power production from 4,000 megawatts with an additional 6,000 megawatts, enough to even export to Sudan and Kenya. Ethiopian civil servants donated 1 month's salary to the dam's construction.
The coming of British colonialists in the region helped shape the legal treaties surrounding the Nile Basin. During colonization, Britain wanted to control the Nile because it provided water for the irrigation of cotton used in European industries.
In 1902, Emperor Menelik II of Ethiopia and the British Empire agreed over the Nile River. The agreement stated that there should not be any construction of any works along the Blue Nile or along Lake Tana, which might decrease the water supply to Egypt.
The 1929 agreement between Egypt and Britain recognized Egyptian rights over the Nile. It gave Egypt a veto on any construction of any projects along the Nile and its tributaries.
Another 1959 agreement saw Egypt being allocated 66% of the Nile waters, while Sudan was given 22% and the 10% was left to the upstream states. The upstream countries, including Ethiopia, were not recognized in the colonialists' agreement.
Egypt used the 1929 and 1959 agreements to argue its case against Ethiopia constructing the Gad Dam. However, the Nile River Basin Cooperative Framework, made up by the other 10 Nile Basin states, challenged these treaties.
There have been negotiations over the matter, as the AU has stepped in to be a mediator. Egypt and Sudan want a legally binding agreement on how much water will be released during droughts and a longer time to fill the dam.
Sudan wants an exchange of data and forewarning on filling of the dam and operation of the hydroelectric generators. It also wants the dam to regulate flooding but not affect water flowing into its own dams. Ethiopia says water flowing won't be affected.
Egypt is one of Africa's major military powers and has threatened arming militias opposed to the Ethiopian government to destabilize the region. Egypt claims history with the Nile. Ethiopia claims national pride and sovereignty.
Conflict over water is a global problem. In Asia, there is conflict over the Mekong River Basin. The Mekong River Basin covers China, Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam.
There is conflict in the basin due to increased activities like the construction of dams, especially in China and Laos, which have decreased the water supply to the riparian states. In addition, the South China Sea conflict is an example of how a water conflict can lead to military confrontation. China militarized 3 islands in the South China Sea.
No country is an island. These rivers are transboundary river basins and should be shared equally. Egypt should also consider desalination of the Mediterranean Sea water. Egypt and Sudan should use their own dams to control drought, while Ethiopia should not restrict water flowing downstream.